Good afternoon, everyone. The purpose of this video is to discuss macroeconomics and show students how to do some basic macroeconomic research. So those of you who've had microeconomics might realize that macro is a little different. Micro deals with the individual person, the decisions that an individual person makes, and the decisions that an individual company makes, and how those decisions are made. Macroeconomics, on the other hand, aggregates everything for a particular area. So we're interested in how many people are employed and how much money the economy makes, the whole economy. So to start this research process, what we're going to do is remember back to 2008, 2009, when the Great Recession happened here in the United States. That Great Recession affected the entire world. And so what we're going to do is compare two countries before and after the Great Recession to see if we can tell how their numbers changed. Okay? So to do that, we're going to measure certain things. We're going to look at certain things we can measure. The main question that I'm going to ask here is, how did that country's industry, their industrial output, change? And what we're doing is we're actually measuring the value added by their particular industry. So, for instance, if a company is making say cars, okay, and they buy the tires from a different country, and they import the tires, but they assemble the car there and put the tires on it. The value that they're doing is adding value for putting the tires on and selling a whole car, okay, as opposed to they didn't produce the tires, but yet they're getting the money for the tires. So they have to subtract out all that kind of money. Another thing that we use to measure is what we call GDP, or gross domestic product. That basically, and you're going to learn more about this later in the course, but what that does is that takes and adds up all the goods and services that are final products in a particular economy and measures it over a period of time. We're also going to reduce inflation, or not measure inflation, or account for inflation, I should say, because what inflation is where the price changes but the value does not. So imagine 1 year the average price for gasoline here in the country is $2.50. The next year the average price for gasoline is $3. Okay, price has gone up. The intrinsic value of that gallon of gasoline did not change. So we're going to be more interested in the taking away that 50-cent inflation price to see how the production of gasoline, or the consumption of gasoline, has changed over a period of time. That's what taking inflation away is. Now, another thing that we're interested in when we look at a macroeconomy is employment. How does employment change? So here we're interested in how much of the country, of the population, is employed. Now, a number you hear in the news here in the United States is we are now at the lowest unemployment in 50 years. This is in 2019. And we're at about 3.6, 3.5% unemployment. But that does not mean that 3.5% of our population is not working. What it means is 3.5% of the people who are working and the people who are looking for a job, actively seeking employment, that we have 3.5% of that group that's not working. Okay, we'll discuss that later in the course also. And then the final one is, how does population change over time? So obviously, as you know, in some countries, you hear about places like Japan, where there are very few children born, but there are very many elderly. And we even see that the population here in the United States is changing over time. Are we having enough kids to replace the elderly population that's dying off? Okay, so some things that we're going to look at in terms of economics. We're going to basically take one example and we're going to follow it step by step to gather and analyze the basic information, specifically the value, the additional value that industry or industrial service adds. And then we'll look at some things we can do beyond that. Now, we're going to have a worksheet. And so we're going to follow a number of steps, and you should be able to see that this first one is going to send you to the Purdue Center for Economic Education, to their web page. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, if I can get my get this to come up, and we're going to go down and find the Purdue Economic website. Okay, Purdue Center for Economic Education. Okay, and I'll give you the link. The link will appear here, and you're going to get a copy of this PowerPoint presentation that I have on the side. And so you can go to that website. And then what we're going to do is scroll down this website till we get to the words World Bank. So what you notice is there's a number of centers here, like Trading and Economics and the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. You'll learn more about the Federal Reserve later in the course. The Bureau of Economic Analysis, the Census Bureau, Economic Indicators, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, all those have important information. But what we're going to do is we're going to look at the World Bank, okay? And we're going to a set of data that the World Bank has, okay? And what we want to do once we're on that website, you see where you have data bank microdata catalog. And let me do this a minute. Depending on how big you have your screen, you'll notice that now these three bars are beside that title, Data Bank Microdata Catalog. But if I close this down a little bit, those three bars are a little bit higher. So it depends on how big your screen is whenever you're doing this. But we're going to click on that, okay? And again, what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down, and we see here they have products and they have World Development Indicator. We want to click on the World Development Indicator under their products heading. Okay, so we double click on that, and the next thing we want to do is scroll down to where it says Open Data Data Bank. And again, if this is widened out on your screen, like I just did, you'll notice Query Database may be a single line here under this Open Data Data Bank. But if you have it reduced like I do here, then you'll notice it occurs on two lines. So we're going to click on Query Database, okay? And that's going to take us to a new site, okay? And what we're going to do at that site is we're going to click on the arrow Expand Country, okay? And it's there now, but I can click it down, okay? So we basically have these four areas under a database. So we are three more under database. So the database has already been, well, we need to select that. Let's see a minute. Okay, we have one selected already, which is that world database that we were just looking at. So we're going to select two countries, and specifically, we're going to look at Greece and Germany. Okay, two countries, a little different, but each one in the European Union. All I did was click on the G under country here, and that brought up all the ones with G. And we'll highlight Germany, or put a check mark in Germany's, and we'll put a check mark next to Greece. Okay. Now it should tell us that we have two countries selected out of the 264 that are available. That's what we want. So, and let's see, I bet that's what I have over here. So we're going to put an X in the letter D to clear the countries. Notice the X right here. Okay, if we had already gone through and done some selecting, we can click on the X and that erases anything that we've already selected. Okay, and what I'm going to do is just do one country at a time. So right now, we'll just click on G and highlight the Greece as the only country that we're looking at right now. And then we'll go down, okay, and we'll collapse country by just clicking on this little arrow here, okay. Now, the next thing we want to do is, and you notice I'm going through the steps here on the left, we want to click on the arrow that expands series, okay, and I'm trying to give it to you as a step-by-step way. You want to click on the X right here to clear out anything that might already be selected, okay. So we have nothing selected, and what we're going to do is scroll down and click on, well, we can either go to the eyes by clicking on the eye up here, or we could just scroll all the way down. I'm going to click on the eye because the one that I want, okay, so we get into the eyes, and specifically I want you to download where it says industry including construction value added using constant dollars of 2010 US dollars. Okay, so what we have to do is, now that we're in the eyes, we scroll down till we find industry. Here's the IMs, the imports, IN, incidents, income. We're still in the, but we're looking for industry. Here's increase individuals. Now we're in the ID, IND, and we're looking for industry, including construction. Not sure what that was all about. Okay, industry including construction, okay, and specifically we want it constant US dollars, okay. So we're going to highlight that one, okay. And then next, we're going to re-click the arrow to collapse series, and we're going to go to time, okay, should be the next one, and we're going to click on the X to clear any times that might be there. And what we want to do is we're going to do, or highlight, 2007, because that's a period of time before the Great Recession. And we're also going to click 2009, right at the peak of the Great Recession. Okay? So we want to compare those two numbers. What were things like before? What are they like after? Okay? Now, we're going to collapse this time, and we need to click on Apply Changes because we made some changes. So we click on Apply Changes. Okay. Now again, I'm going to expand this out just a little bit. But you'll notice that up here it says, oops, didn't want it to go that big. You'll notice it says Table, and then it says Download Options. So we're going to click on the Download Options, okay? And we're going to choose Excel, okay? So we can download this as an Excel spreadsheet. You saw that circle race across the screen, okay? That was the download happening, okay? Now we need to open that downloaded Excel file. So we go to the downloads. Here's our new file, and we open it, okay? Now I'm going to expand it a little bit to make it a little bit easier to see, okay? So we have the date when we downloaded the data. We have the information up here, and again the cells are kind of collapsed right now. So what we want to do is focus on the information that we're most interested in. So what I'm going to do is expand out a couple of cells, okay, and I'm going to do, just to make it a little bit easier for you to see. Okay. So we're going to wrap text so that it stays in the size. Okay. Now, we're not so concerned about this series code because that doesn't mean anything to us right now, so we're not going to pay any attention to those. We're really interested in these two columns. Okay. So again, we're going to do wrap text so that you can see where it is. Okay. Now, the dollar amount, what we're going to do to make that a little bit easier to read, we're going to format cells. Okay, see if I have that listed here. Okay, I don't. So what we're going to do is format cells. We're going to call it currency. Okay, but it's such a big number we don't need the decimal places. But we want the dollar sign, we want the commas, what have you. Okay. Okay. Now, obviously I had expanded that out quite a bit. So what I need now is to open the cells up so you can see them a little bit better. Okay. So what we see is Greece, for this value added in its industry, that it had $55 billion in 2007. In 2009, that has dropped to $48 billion. Okay? So we know something about it now. Okay? Well, that's not quite enough information yet. So what we want to do, okay, I just formatted the cells to currency. Okay, so it's a little bit easier for you to see. And let me do this a minute. Okay. And we need one more bit of information on just this level that we're looking at right now. Okay. So what I'm going to do is open up a cell. And what we want to do is figure out what percentage change was that. Okay. Now it's real simple in Excel. And you probably are aware of this already. You can type in a formula. So the formula to figure out this percentage is going to be equals, and we're going to take the difference between these two numbers, and we're looking at what the 2009 number ends up being. So we're going to use that, and basically what we're going to do is say equals, parenthesis, F2, in other words, that cell, minus E2, okay? And we're going to close parenthesis, and we're going to divide by the starting number, which is E2, okay? Now that's going to give us a value, okay? And you'll notice what it is. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go a step further. Let's make sure that I've got this over here. Okay, we want to convert that to a percentage. Okay, to convert that number to a percentage, we highlight the cell. Okay, we right click, we go to Format Cells, we go down to Number, and we actually make it a percentage. Okay, with 2 decimal points. And we click OK. Now we see that that value that industry has added using constant dollars, okay, that the value that industry added dropped by over 13% between the high point before the Great Recession and the low point of the Great Recession. Okay, so you can see how we got those numbers. Okay, now we've got some interesting information there. Okay, but we really need to compare it to something else. So let's go back, and we're going to compare it to a second country. Okay, so we're going to go back to the same website if we had left it, but here we've got it somewhere else on our screen. Okay, and once again we're going to keep the same database. We're going to go to the country, and this time we're going to clear it out. Okay. Now you could do this in one step, but we're going to do it this way, just in case you did some other things. So we're clearing it out. Okay. Now we're going to go to the G's, and this time we're going to put in Germany. Okay. Now, we're going to re-click on country to collapse it, and we're going to click on series to expand it. Now again, we might have made some kind of a change in the series. You see we have one selected out of the 1429, but you might have made some changes to it. So what we can do is go look and see if we did make that change. If we scroll down, okay, and we find that that same one is selected, then we're good. So we don't have to X out of it or anything, okay? Although my instructions have you Xing so that you clear whatever is in the series, and then you go back to the I and go down and make sure that you enter the same amount, or not amount, but the same measure, okay? And then we re-click series to collapse it, and we go down to time, and again we want to make sure that the same years are selected, okay? If something else was selected, let's say we had those many years selected, well, we don't want that. We could either deselect it, or if we'd had a whole bunch, we could click on the X and eliminate them all, and then re-click 2007, 2009. Okay, so easy enough to do. Okay, so I don't think, and again, I tried to give you the detailed instructions so that you could do it in just about any order that you needed to. Okay, so we want to make sure both those years. Now we've got to, again, we'll collapse this up here in time, and now we're going to tell it apply changes again. And I may have forgotten to put in the apply changes before. So if I did, you know that you need to go to the download option. We go to table. Okay. Let's see what's going on here. Okay. Help us. Oh, that's what's going on. Get rid of that. Okay. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to exit out of it and come back again. So I'm going to click on World Bank, and we're just going to do it from scratch. Okay. I'm going to come back up here. Yeah. Go to World Development Indicators. We'll go down, click Query Database. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and exit out of that. We're going to go to G. We're going to put in Germany. We're going to collapse it. We're going to go to Series. I want to make sure that the one we selected before is the one that's selected. Excuse me. Yes, it is. Close the series down. Go to time. And we got 2007, 2009. We come up, we apply changes. Okay. Now we can download options. Okay. Again, go to Excel. As you saw the download happen. Let's see where I am on my list of instructions. Okay. Choose Excel. Open the downloaded Excel file. So we go down to Downloads. We click on New Excel file. And this time we're just interested in that row of numbers. We can highlight it. We can copy. We can come over here and we can paste. Okay. Now, and we can do our word wrap text so we can see that indeed it does say the same thing. Now, we do need to change our numbers so that we can read them. Okay, let's get rid of this one. And so, again, we highlight the columns A through F and copy. And then we where it says highlight Greece, copy. Highlight cells row 3. Okay, what I did was, okay. And you can do it by that and it'll make more sense. Now, we're down to where we want to format the currency with no decimals but commas. Okay, so we highlight these two columns. We go down to format cells. We go to currency, eliminate the decimals, and we go bingo. Okay. Now, we see, obviously, Germany's numbers are a lot bigger than Greece's numbers. But the question is going to be, did Germany lose as much, lose more, lose less? Okay. So, again, we're going to use the same formula. And we're going to then convert it to a percentage. Okay. And so what I can do if I've already got it set out like this, I can just copy, paste, and we see that Germany has had a 14.5% drop in industrial value or industry value added using constant dollars. We've taken away the inflation, if you will, by using what dollars would buy in the U.S. in 2010. Okay, so we use that as our standard. So that eliminates any inflation between 2007 and 2009. So we're measuring constant dollars. And we see that, yes, indeed, Germany, even though it's much larger, it has, in 2007, it had $930 billion, okay? And Greece had 55 billion with a B dollars. Okay. In 2009, the Germany dropped from 930 down to 794. So it lost what? How much did it lose? It lost 130 plus 6 more, $136 billion it lost in that change to go from 930 down to 794. At the same time, Greece went from 55 billion down to 48 billion. So they lost, what was it, $7 billion, $7.5 billion in that time. So obviously, the economy of Greece is much smaller than the economy of Germany. Okay. Now, what are some other things we can tell? Coming back over here. Obviously, you need to save your Excel file, give it a name, and save it somewhere. And you could even clean it up a little bit and get rid of the codes that we don't need. Delete that column, delete that column. You don't need that. And just keep the important information, right? And we could put a label up here, percent change. I didn't get it. Let's do it this way. Space, percent change from 2007 to 2009. Okay. And we probably ought to wrap text so it's easier to read. Okay. So now we have some bits of information that might be helpful. Okay. Now, really, we've just done a little bit of stuff here. Okay. So what we could do, okay, we really need to answer the following questions. Okay. In which country had the greater amount of industrial production and why? Well, we saw Germany did. The why? Well, we need to do some research to figure that out. Germany is obviously an industrial giant, okay, compared to Greece. In 2009, which country had the greater amount of industrial production in 2009? Well, Germany still did by many times what Greece had. Right? So, another question we can ask is, in 2009, which country experienced a greater reduction in industrial production? Well, again, Germany had lost more than Greece did. Okay, as a percentage of its total, it lost a greater percentage. Okay, and then the question becomes, once you're at this stage, what other research can you do to help you answer more these questions that we have already? So think of this as a beginning format for research that you would do to answer a simple question. Okay, and I'll provide you a copy of this checklist, if you will. But we're going to go a little step further while I've got you here. Okay, there are some more things we want to explore. Okay, so we could do the same kind of research, and we could do it a little bit quicker than we did before. Okay, so let's come back here, and we're going to start off with the same information. Okay, but in our countries, instead of just doing Germany, we're going to do Germany and Greece. Okay, so we're going to have two countries. We're going to keep the same database. The same time frame, we're going to do just 2009 to 2007, 2007 to 2009, so we're going to keep that the same. But the series, we're going to add a lot more series to it. Okay, so a couple things. We already have the industrial production. Let's go find out what gross domestic product was. Now remember, you're going to learn a lot more about gross domestic product. It's how we measure countries and how we measure an individual country's change over time. So we're going to go to the G's, okay, and we're going to measure gross domestic product, GDP, in constant 2010 dollars. Okay. That way we're eliminating any inflation that sets in. Now, another thing that we use to measure countries by is how much gross domestic product per person that they have in a given year. And again, we call that gross domestic product per capita. And we want to use constant US dollars again. So we'll check mark that one. Okay. Now, we talked about employment earlier. So what we want to find out is in the employment area, and we'll click the E up here for employment. We know employment lists are going to be in there. And we're going to have to scroll down till we get to something that looks like it might be employment. Electrics, employers, employment. Okay. Now, they have employment in different categories. So we're going to select employment in agriculture as a percent of total employment, okay? And it's modeled in this ILO estimate, which is fine. It's a method of the way they're measuring it. Okay? So we're going to get that one, okay? We also want to know that as a percent of, well, we're going to get the other one in a minute. Okay. We're going to go down and we find that they've got agriculture. They also have industry, which was what we were looking at earlier. Okay, so we want employment in industry as a percent of total employment. And we want employment in services. Okay, so we click those three. Okay, now we'd like to have employment as it relates to population. Okay, so again, we talk about the employment level in our country. We said it was 3.6%, give or take a little. That's not 3.6% of the population. So the number we're going to get here is how many people are working in the population. Now you'll notice that what they're measuring here at the World Trade Organization, they're measuring employment to population ratio for people 15 years old and older. Okay. So they count anyone as 15, if they're older than 15, then they're in the, in the workforce. Okay. So we're looking for 15% and we're looking for total. Okay. So employment to population ratio, 15 years and older, total percent. Okay. So we got that one. And we have the three for service, for industry, and for agriculture. Okay. And we probably ought to say how big are those countries? How much land do they occupy? So we can go to the L and we can scroll down to land. Let's see, where do we go? Land, area, square kilometers. Okay, so we can mark that. So we've got a whole bunch of things now that we're measuring all at the same time, and we're comparing it between 2007 and 2009. Now we can click Apply Changes, and it makes new calculations. Now we could scroll across here and look at the numbers, but that's not really what we want to do. We want to get them downloaded into our thing. Let's see, we have Germany. Did I make sure I got both countries? Let me see that. Yeah, we got Greece and Germany. Okay. So now we're going to download that Excel file. Okay. And we'll call it up the same way. And you will notice that we have a lot more fancy information on it, but it's all crammed together again in cells that are pretty small, okay, and that need to be, we need to do something to them to make them readable, okay. And we got some cells we don't need, like the country code, we don't really need that, and we don't need the series code, we can delete that. And then we can go down and expand the numbers so that we can compare them, make sure that we're only getting dollar values into dollars, and if it's a percent, that we get the number as a percent. And we could even go through and make our calculations. So I've done that already, and what I'm going to do is call up that, show you that basically. So let's get rid of this. So here's an example that I've cleaned up the numbers a little bit and made them a little bit easier to read. Okay? And the same set of numbers we were just looking at. So a couple things we see, and let's go ahead and just expand this out so it's a little bit bigger and easier to read. Okay. Okay. I may have to make it a little bit smaller because I put some other things on it. Okay. So we got a bunch of numbers here. Here's one thing that we see. Okay. We can see that Germany has over 10 times the gross domestic product. Let me make that a little bit smaller so we can see it. Okay. 10 times the amount of gross domestic product. So we look at the blue column and we see that Greece has 316 billion, okay, gross domestic product at the end of 2009. And at the end of 2009, Germany had 3 trillion, not 300 billion, but $3 trillion, 3,260 billion. So if we look at the percentage, okay, we see that Germany has over 10 times the amount of gross domestic product that, looking right here, okay, that it has over 10 times the gross domestic product that Greece has, okay. We can also see that Greece's gross domestic product, okay, that it's the amount of gross domestic product is about 7.3 times the amount as the people. I got that messed up, don't I? The amount of people as Greece is 2.7. Okay, I see what it is. So we see that there's 7.3 times the amount of population. So Greece has 11 million people. Germany has 81, almost 82 million people at the end of 2009. Okay, so Germany has 7 times as many people as Greece has, and 10 times as much gross domestic product. What about their land? Well, Greece has about 128, 129,000 square kilometers. Germany has 348, almost 349,000 square kilometers. So again, Greece has, pretty close, well, 2.7 times as much land. So we know something about those two countries. Okay. Now, we can go a step further and highlight a couple other things. Okay. Again, Greece is value added by its industry. Now, that's the number we're looking at. Okay. And we see that Greece from 2007, where they were at 55 billion with a B, and they dropped to 48 billion, they actually lost 15.3% of their value added through their industry through the time of the Great Recession. Okay. What about, what else can we tell? Well, we can see that the gross domestic product of Greece was at 332 billion. It dropped to 316 billion. So they lost 4.85% of their gross domestic product across the whole economy during that period of time. Okay. Now, what about Germany? Well, we look at Germany and we see that the value added by their industry went from $930 billion, okay, down to $795 billion. And that was a drop of nearly 17%, 16.99%. Okay. Now, question is, did Germany have a much bigger drop in industrial production in considering the change? Okay, in other words, much bigger percentage change than Greece did. Well, remember, Greece had lost 15.34%, and Germany lost 16.99%. That's about a 16.5% difference, where Germany lost 16.5% more than Greece did in that recession. Okay? So just interesting to look at. Okay. Okay. We could do the same thing with their gross domestic product. Gross domestic product was $332 billion for Greece, went to $316 billion, dropped almost 5%, 4.85. But look what was happening in Germany. Germany went from $3,424 billion to $3,260 billion. They ended up losing 5.03%. So an amazingly close percentage drop, okay, from 4.85 to 5.03. That's pretty small change. They both had about the same kind of impact. And so that's interesting in and of itself. Okay. So just showing you how you can look at some of these numbers and see different things. One more we want to look at. Okay. And this is taking a look at the unemployment levels. Okay. And the first thing we're going to look at is, since we were considering industry, we want to know how much of the employment was from the industrial area. And they saw that out of all the people that are employed, roughly 22%, 22.44 were in 2007 were working in the industrial area, as opposed to agriculture or services. And that dropped from 22.4 to 21.1. So they had a 6.3% drop in employment in the industrial area. They had a little bit of a drop in service. A little bit of an increase in service. So the people working in service went from 66.2 thirds of the employed people to 67.2, so they increased a little bit. And the people in agriculture increased a little bit from 11.33 to 11.7. So we had two areas that increased, one area that took a big hit. What about employment to total population? Well, Greece is experiencing roughly 49.3% of all of their population above the age of 15 are working in 2007. That number went from 49.3% to 49.05%. So it was a drop of about a half a percent. What happened to Germany during the same time? Well, again, we look at the industrial area. Germany was at 29.9% of their employees were employed in industrial work, and it dropped from 29.9 to 28.8. So they had a 3.82% drop in people working in the industrial area. But what's interesting is they also had a drop in people working in agriculture. They went from 2% working in agriculture to 1.68%. And the people working in services increased, went from 67.85 to 69.52. Okay? Just some interesting numbers. But the real key is, what about the percent of population that is employed that's above the age of 15? Okay? So we saw that Greece, starting back in 2007, had 49.3% of their population above the age of 15 still working. Germany had 54.07%. So they have quite a bit more. And in 2009, after the Great Recession, yes, Greece did drop a little from 49.3 to 49.05, but Germany actually increased. They went from 54.07 to 54.76. So they increased the number of people that were working. Now we could go back and say, well, did they also increase in population? We look at the population numbers, and in 2007, the population total for Germany was 82,266,000, and in 2009 it was 881,902,000. So they went down a little. They went down about 300,000, give or take a little. About 360,000, give or take a little. Okay, so they actually dropped about 0.44%. 0.44. Now, I went ahead and added some numbers over here. What this is showing is the change, in other words, how much Germany has as percentage of Greece. Okay, so if we look at the 15.34% percent change that Greece had, they dropped by 15.4 or 15.34, and Germany's industrial value added dropped from by 16.99%. That meant that Germany had 16.51 greater percent drop than Greece had. And you can go back through and do the same kind of numbers. Okay? So this gives you an idea of some of the research you can do. Should help you work on your assignment for Unit 1 and give you a feel for the big picture. So with that, thank you all very much. And with that, we're going to end the recording. If you have any questions, please contact me. Thank you very much.